In the 2202 release of SAP S/4HANA Cloud, the situation handling framework was extended so as to allow customers to create their own custom situation scenarios. The 2208 release of SAP S/4HANA Cloud brought the ability to receive EDI events to update your freight bookings and freight orders. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could combine these two awesome capabilities to offer supply chain professionals with a supply chain sensing, listening, alerting framework that would tell them that a curveball is coming their way and provide them with the information that they can then take an action on to remedy to that situation before a molehill becomes a mountain of a problem? Well, in this video, that is exactly what we are going to show you. The scenario will be that we have a freight order that has been sent to a carrier. The carrier has accepted the transportation of that particular freight order. He's even confirmed to us a pickup date. However, as we see it too often these days, disaster is going to strike. It could be that the carrier is going to have his fleet that may not be sufficient to perform the pickup that he's supposed to do. It could be that due to sickness, he doesn't have enough drivers to perform the transportation that he wanted to do. Whatever the case may be, he sends me a message to tell me that the pickup is going to be delayed by 2 days. Rather than me going to try and find that information, keeping or look at my freight orders, constantly trying to find that needle in a haystack that is going to be coming in from left field, I'm going to let that sensing, that alerting framework come to me and provide me the information that something is about to happen. Hence, this situation, this custom situation that we are going to use is going to alert us, tell us that a carrier has provided us an update that may have consequences that may not benefit our organization, and we can then take an action on that particular situation. So without further ado, let's just jump right in and see what that looks like in the system. Alright, so as usual, we have fast-tracked the process. So we have already created the sales order, we've already planned the ensuing freight unit to a freight order, and we have created the freight order that we have here. And if we look at the freight order, we can see it has obviously been assigned to a carrier. He has accepted it, and he's also confirmed the date at which he will be performing the pickup, which is going to be on the 12th of the 9th at 1:30. Now, unfortunately, the system that I am using here is not connected to the BTP time and distance service, so the end date has not been scheduled, but this is somewhat irrelevant with regards to the scenario that we are looking at the moment. So the date and time to note is it's planned for the 12th of the 9th at 1:30. Now, as I said, the scenario is that my carrier is now going to provide me via EDI an updated message to tell me that he can no longer perform the pickup at the previously confirmed date. So he's going to send me a revised date and time for the pickup. And then we'll see what's that influence, what follow-on, what domino effect this is going to have on my operations. So to mimic the receipt of a message, we are going to be using Postman, and as you can see here, what we are doing is we're sending an expected arrival. So we're sending a new estimated time, which is going to slip from the 12th on to the 15th. So all I need to do here really is just put in my freight order number, which is the one that finishes with 459. And then all we really need to do here is just click on send. We can see that the payload has been accepted by S/4HANA Cloud. So let's just hope that it has also been processed. So let's go back into S/4HANA Cloud. We'll go into our freight order, and hopefully the freight order will have been adjusted. Yes, so as you can see here, we have the new departure time of 15th of the 9th, which has been updated as a result of receiving that message, which was giving me a new estimated time of arrival. So this is really the start of our scenario. We've received this update. Now I'm the supply chain planner. I'm going about my daily duties. And what is now going to happen is that the situation handling framework is going to kick in. It's going to pick up that this freight order has been delayed and will then send me a notification to advise me of this change so that I can then take the necessary actions to remedy that particular situation.
A few moments later.
And there we go. You can see that the situation handling framework has kicked in, has detected some situations that I need to be aware of. And this is then obviously reflected in the bell icon menu, where we can see that we have 4 notifications. So let's click on it and see what this is all about. And you can see that we have several messages pertaining to freight orders, which corresponds to our situation. So this is the freight order that we had created. So let's see, it says the freight order has been updated by the carrier, so it gives me the name. It also tells me that a new event of type expected arrival has been posted, and the updated time shift is 3 days. So this is quite consequential. Now from here, what you can do is you can then simply click on the notification, and this is going to then take you to the My Situations extended application. And you can then drill into the details of that situation as it has been configured. So for example, here again, we have the notification of what the issue is. We can click on more information, which is also a link that we've indicated in the situation type to take the user to, which might potentially give him more information in terms of what to do, who to contact if this situation arises. So let me just close this up. Here we have the information that we had instructed in our settings to be given to the user, so he knows where, against which location the event has been posted, the kind of order type. It also gives him here an idea of the size of the cargo, because obviously if we're talking about a full truck or full pallet, then his actions might be different than if it was just a small box. He also has information pertaining to the customer, in this case, that is impacted by this particular delay, and also the carrier that has reported this particular event. As we will see in just a moment, we can also, when we configure the custom situation type, indicate what are the actions that we want to afford the user to take on. So for example, here I might be wanting to go directly into that freight order to see what this is all about. What is this freight order all about? So I can click on display freight order, this little button that we've got here. And as you can see, it takes me directly into the freight order. I can see the event that has been posted. I can look at the general data. I can see and confirm the times are not the ones that I expected them to be. I can have a look at the cargo. I can, change to edit. I can take whatever action it is that I might want to undertake on this particular freight order. I've also given the option to manage freight orders. And this takes me then to a different app, which is Manage Freight Orders. But by using a combination of having defined the semantic object freight order and the semantic action, which would be, in this case, manage, that we have configured in the situation, we are directly taken to the relevant information. Now, again, I could, for example, here directly want to cancel a freight order because maybe the time difference is just too great. I need to reschedule with somebody else. I can maybe create deliveries, calculate charges, send to carrier, do certain actions, or once again, as we've just seen it, go into the freight order if that is what I wanted to do. I can go back to the situation. And then lastly, what I also have given the user the ability to do is to go in the monitor execution application. And once again, using a combination of semantic object and action, I can go into that particular application, maybe check on the execution status or whatever other fields have been configured, and again, drill into it or take some action against that freight order. So there you go. This is essentially the combination of those two very powerful capabilities that have allowed me to go about my daily operations without worrying, is this going to happen? Has this happened? Whereas, in fact, I've completely left the system to look at the data that was created or incoming into the system and advising me of those issues. Now, obviously, I've reacted to it immediately. Another way that I could have gone about it is, as part of my daily activities, I can go to a specific application, which in this case is this one here, My Situation Extended, and I could also have had that in my main Fiori Launchpad entry screen to directly tell me that there is something I need to do. And if we go into this particular application, you would have the various scenarios here on the left. In our case, we've only got the freight event updates, which are then going to be displayed here on the right hand side. As you can see here, we have a number of filters which are also defined in the situation that we have defined. So this is completely customizable. You also have here information, as we'll see in a moment when we look at how the situation was configured. Here I, for example, have indicated that I wanted the anchor and the trigger object columns to have these names of freight order and event, so totally customizable. And also the information that you see here is also completely customizable. Just like I did 2 seconds ago, what I can do is I can go into the situation per se and view that situation once again and take action on it. Or maybe once I had taken action against it, just say, okay, I'm now going to close this situation. It's done, it's dusted. I've been notified and I've taken the necessary actions. So it's now resolved. And my to-do list has now gone down to 3 situations that I need to either resolve or delete or take some kind of action against. Okay, so now that we have seen the process from an end-to-end point of view, let's take a step backward and see what it was that we needed to set up in the system in order to produce this scenario. So to create your own custom use cases, it's essentially going to be a 4, maybe 5-step process. And I'll get into the why of a 5th process in just a moment. But essentially, the first thing is that you need to go and define your situation object. And the situation object is going to be a business object. In other words, the sales order is a business object, or a procurement, purchasing contract. That's another kind of business object. And we have plural here because obviously this is where you're going to create your objects, but also within the context of a situation use case, you are going to use 2 objects. One that is referred to as the anchor object, and that's the one against which you will enact a situation. And then we also have the trigger object, which, as the name indicates, is that which triggers the situation to arise in the first place. So you could, for example, to put it in simpler terms, if we look at professional services where we have customer projects on one hand, and on the other hand we have timesheet entries. So in this particular context, you could, for example, have the customer project that is the anchor, and you could have the timesheet entry that would be the trigger. And if a consultant enters a timesheet that is against a number of hours that exceeds what was planned in the WBS of the customer project, then that would create a situation. So this is where we have the cause and effect relationship between the timesheet and the customer project, the trigger and the anchor. Then we have the situation scenario. Then we have the situation type, and here we're going to first create a template, and then from the template we'll create a situation type. So that would be our 4 steps right there and then. Now, why I said 5 is because you can also create your own custom CDSs. When you create a business situation object, you are going to define for it what's called a structure, and we'll get to it in just a moment, and that structure is going to point to a CDS. Now, you can absolutely use the SAP delivered CDSs if they fit the bill in terms of the data that you need to set up that particular situation use case, but you can also, if you like, create your own custom CDSs. In this case, I have created my own custom CDS because I was going to use it for another purpose as well, but I've also added some calculated fields in my custom CDS, such as the one that is going to calculate the time difference between the planned date of the pickup with the updated date. So as I said, you can leverage the standard ones, no problem at all, and it's not mandatory to create your own if that is what you wish. So let's go back to the situation object. And as I said, you need an anchor and a trigger. And when you model those two anchor and trigger objects, they can both be an object, a situation object in their own right, but you can also use one and one only to define both the anchor and the trigger, which is what I've done in my case. In my CDS, I have information pertaining to the anchor, the freight order per se, as well as the events. But even from a business object point of view, the events are sub pieces of information that exist within the context of that freight order. They don't have a separate existence, if you like. So let's go ahead and look at the managed situation object, which is the first object that you would need to define. Now, I'm only going to look at the sections that I have used, but by all means, do explore all of the other ones. And I would also very strongly suggest that you leverage the inbuilt help, which is incredibly rich in the context of these particular applications. So each one of those focus circles is going to provide you some more information, which is quite rich, as you can see. And also there are some linkages to the Fiori app library, as well as the SAP help, if you need to have access to those. So again, look at the help, very rich, very helpful. So here I've indicated the situation object. I've indicated the SAP object type that this refers to, which is the freight order in our case. In terms of structures, which is what I indicated earlier on, this is where we have referenced the CDS, the custom CDS that we created. So this structure name, that we see here refers to a CDS. And again, you can see the object type, which is freight order. Okay, let's go. Then we have navigation targets, and the navigation targets are in effect those navigation options that you will give to the user. In other words, in this situation, I will give the user the ability to navigate to another application or open an application to get further insights and information to react to this particular situation. Now, for each one of these navigation targets, I've had to indicate a semantic object as well as a semantic object action. And also note that you can't make this stuff up. This has to be the syntax has to be respected. Now, the help will tell you that you can go to the Fiori app library to see what the semantic object action are for a particular semantic object. And to do that, you go to an app that uses your semantic object, and it'll tell you what the semantic object action is, which is absolutely a good way to go about it. Another way that I want to offer you to do so is, if, for example, I go into the Manage Freight Order app, and let me pull up the URL, you can see here in the URL I've got freight order, which is my semantic object, and manage, which is my semantic object action. Similarly, if I go into a freight order, you can see that the semantic object is obviously still the same, which is freight order, but the semantic object action has changed to be display object. And in my case, I will want to give the user the ability to drill down into a freight order. So these are two very important pieces of information that I will want to leverage in my situation use case setup, which is what I've done here. So here, for example, I've said that I will let my user display as well as go into the monitor execution application and the manage application. So this is the semantic object action that I've just shown you with obviously the correct semantic object. And then into end user actions. So it's one thing to say that this is what I want my user to be able to do, but then I've also translated those into end user actions. And all I've really done here is just to say I'm creating an end user action that is leveraging or a mirror of my navigation target, if you like. So that's for the situation object. The next thing that we need to do, obviously, is to define a situation scenario. So we go to this second application, which is here, and we'll go into the scenario that we've created here. Obviously, when you create your situation scenario, you reference the object that you have just created, and then you also add some additional layers of information. The first thing is noteworthy is the list page layout. And here you can see that we've indicated 2 columns. You can indicate up to 2 columns, one for the anchor and one for the trigger. And the names that we see here, freight order and event, are the names that I've decided to give. Now you might be asking, okay, what is the importance of this information? Where do I get to actually see it? Well, if we go to the My Situation Extended application, and we go to the situation types that we've created for this scenario, you can see that these 2 columns that we had defined of freight order and event can be seen right here. So we've got these 2 columns, and this is where the label is coming from. This is what we have defined in our scenario, freight order and event. Again, we have the general actions that we have carried over from the object, and then obviously we have the situation trigger. Now, the situation trigger allows me to navigate one level further, and the information that we have here that's noteworthy are the fields in list pages. Now, for those 2 columns that I've just shown you, freight order and event, and as you can see here, we have specific information, like here the carrier name, or code I should say, the ship to party code, and the stop location code. And in the event, we've got the code of the event. Well, this is information that has been configured right here. In the fields in list pages, we find our 2 columns, and in the mapped fields is where we have indicated those fields that we wanted to see. So that explains where those fields would be coming in from. Then we've got the situation page layout, and the situation page layout is going to influence what we see once we go into the situation. So here, for example, I go into a situation, and you can see that the information shown is we have order information, we have the consignee information, and the carrier information, as well as here we've got those 3 buttons, which are the actions, that the navigation targets that we had defined. And those were defined right here. So here I've said that in my page layout, I want to have one source section, which is anchor object in this case, and I also want to have subsections to it, which are those 3 that we had: order information, consignee, and carrier. So if we click on this particular line, you see those subsection labels that we have just seen, and then if we drill down one level deeper once again, we see all of the fields that we said we wanted to see in the situation detail, which is all of this right there. And we do that for each one of these subsections that we have decided to create. Once again, I have here the 3 actions, the navigation targets that we had created, where I want the user to be able to display, manage, or monitor freight orders, and that refers to, again, those 3 buttons that we see down here at the bottom. Okay, so let's go back out of the situation scenario, and then the next thing is to define a template. So the template is not usable directly, but what we will later on do is create a situation type of the template. And you could potentially create just one situation type of the template, but you could also create 5 situation types of a template. And the reason why you would want to create 1 versus 5 could be that some of the criteria in terms of responsibility will be based on the purchasing organization, for example. So you would want to have 1 situation type to go to a group of people that are defined as being responsible for purchase organization X, and then you could have some other ones that are responsible for purchase organization Y. So let's go into the manage situation types, and in this application you can create both the template as well as the definitive situation type. So let's go and look at the template first, and lots of commonalities will exist between the template and the situation type. So this is kind of where the rubber hits the road, if you like, and where we kind of put together all of the information that we've created so far. So once again, we've got our actions, which the user can potentially take. I haven't used any event-based triggers, meaning that I haven't, for example, defined an event as the trigger, but what I've done here is I've used batch-based triggers, meaning that a program, a batch program, will run in the background at a predefined interval. It'll look at the data that has been stored in that CDS that I've defined as being used for the situation use case, and then obviously it'll use that to determine what the trigger and the anchor information is. So let's go into the trigger that we've defined here, batch-based trigger, because it also houses some important information. Now, the first thing that we see here is the condition, and this is going to define, so this will be valid for all of the situation types that we're going to be creating off this template. And what we've done here is we have put a filter, and we're saying that we want to trigger a situation if this condition is verified. So let's look at what that condition is. And as you can see here, for the trigger object, what we've done is said that if the event is expected arrival, so if it looks at the CDS and finds an event with that particular code, it's going to trigger a situation. And that's the only field that we've put in here. You could also use additional conditions, and then they would be processed in an if-else sequence. Then we have the situation display, and the situation display is essentially going to have an impact or influence what you see. So the situation text is going to influence what you see, number one, when you click on that little bell icon. And then we've got the, we've got the notification text, which is going to be the text that we're going to see once we get into the notification per se. And the text can be identical, but they can also be different. It really is up to you. We've also defined a text that's going to be put in the email template if the notification is going to go via email. And of course, for data protection reasons, we're not putting any information that could be useful if it fell into the wrong hands. So all we're putting here really is just a very generic text to say a freight order has been updated, and the person will get a link taking them to the situation from their email client. And then again, also the navigation actions, which are those three buttons that we saw down at the bottom of the situation detail screen. So this is essentially the template. We've also in the template indicated some batch job scheduling information. We've also referenced a responsibility team category, but as you can see here, we haven't actually defined a specific team. So just on that team responsibility section as well, if you do create your own team, then you'll also need to set up some configuration in Manage Your Solution for your team, or if you're using a CBC system. So we've created the situation template, and then you'll go on to create your specific situation type. Now the situation type is what is really going to be the object that's going to be used by the system to find those situations that need to be notified. If you are going to create a situation type, what you need to do is just say create situation type, and in the next pop-up box you'll get it'll ask you what the template is. So let's go and look at the situation type per se. And as I said, pretty much all of the information that I had put in the template has been copied across into my situation type. The only thing that I've really done here in addition to my template is, number one, I've indicated a scheduled start time at when I want that particular job to kick off. And I've also adopted the details of the template, which is to say that this job is going to run daily every 3 hours. The additional thing that I've also done here in my situation type is that I've actually now referenced the members of the team that I created that should be notified of those situations as and when they occur. So in this case, we're talking about freight orders, freight events. So it stands to reason that it would be a freight related person that would get those messages. And as I said, this is also part of that configuration that you would do in Manage Your Solution, defining those member functions. And then if we look at the situation batch-based triggers, you could then also, in the situation type, have further refined whatever came in from the template. So I could have, in my situation type, added additional conditions to further refine and define what would constitute a situation for this situation type. For example, I could have said, well, I only want to have those situations notified if this is the event that comes in and if the carrier is, carrier XYZ, that is a carrier that is not necessarily very reliable. And I hence want to understand and know if he sends me these kinds of messages. Apart from that, all of the information I've adopted from the template, but again, the text I could have also further fine-tuned to the context of my situation type if it was warranted. And then, of course, the navigation actions, which I have not changed. So there you go. In a nutshell, that really is the 4-step process to follow or 5, as I said, if you wanted to create your own custom CDS to define your own situation use cases. So a very powerful framework, and I look forward to hearing from you to see what great scenarios you've come up with to define some situations in your organizations. Until next time, stay safe.